Good evening.
Yeah.
Hope you're all doing well. Today we're learning Maseches Bava Metzia. We're on the bottom of Mem Hey Amud Aleph, about 2/3 of the way down. Second word on the line is Tashma. And I'm going to be moving hopefully fairly quickly. If I really have my way, I'll get to the bottom of Mem Vav Medbeis. If not, we'll get 2/3 of the way down. And if not, God bless, we'll stop wherever we get to by the time the 9:30 Mara rolls around. So we'll see.
Like in perfect alignment with the rest of the world.
If I get to where I want to, we'll be in perfect alignment with the rest of the world.
You're in alignment. I'm not.
All right. So says the Gemara, Toshma, Rabosai, another brisa. We have been discussing gold, and we had said that there's seemingly a machlokas within Rebbe. In Rebbe's childhood, he said that silver was merchandise and gold was currency. And in his older years, Rebbe was of the opinion, and this is how our Mishnah looks at the beginning of our Perek HaZahav, is that Zahav is the merchandise and silver is the currency. Now, just to summarize in one sentence what we've been saying, is that kinyanim are not affected through currency. Kinyanim are affected through a kinyan of merchandise. So what we were just talking about before is that in today's reality, when I pay for something, it's mine. That's not how it works in halacha. The way it works in halacha is a halachic kinyan takes place on the item to be purchased, merchandise or pira, as the Gemara refers to it, and that then brings about a need to pay. So we've been trying to discuss gold. We're going to bring a brisa now to try and see if we can better understand what this means. Toshma, the brisa reads 2/3 of the way down. So now you're in Yerushalayim. You've already taken your Meiser Sheni, and you have made its Kedusha transfer onto coins. Now you're in Yerushalayim, and you're trying to get your larger coins and break them down into smaller coins so you can go shopping and eat your Meiser Sheni in Yerushalayim. You're allowed to completely cash out. A sela is a silver coin with 786 copper coins, prutos. So you're allowed to fully cash out. As mentioned yesterday, that basically means that he's concerned about the potential of reducing the Meiser Sheni by having to change out in such large numbers, and therefore he holds that you can only do half. So whatever half of 786 is, that is how much you are allowed to cash out when you get to Yerushalayim. So it says the Gemara, Hashta, now that we know that kaspa legabe priti mechalalinon, that silver, even as it relates to prutos, that we are mechalel, meaning you can go from silver to prutos in order to go shopping. The lo amrinon kesef rishon velo kesef sheni. We don't say, as we hinted to yesterday, that you're only allowed to use peiros to coin and then coin to peiros, but you're not allowed to do peiros to coin to a different type of coin, right? We said yesterday you can't do that. Over here, we don't say that. So the gabe dahava, in regards to gold, the chashiv minei, which is even more chashiv than anything else we're dealing with, than silver and than with copper, mi amrinan kesef rishon velo kesef sheni, pasha, we would say that you're allowed to transfer on kesef. So then how do we understand yesterday's Gemara, which seemed to say kesef rishon velo kesef sheni? So let's just review the question. There's a subtlety. In the world of Meiser Sheni, we know that we're allowed to be mechalel the peiros onto ma'os. So let's say I have $100 worth of peiros, and there's a coin worth $100, a silver coin. So I take the peiros. I am mekadesh, mechalel is the language actually. Mechalel the peiros onto the $100 coin. Then I come to Yerushalayim. I take the $100 coin and I buy food. That's easy. Everyone agrees that that's how that works. But let's say I want to do fruit, and then not only do I want to go to the prutos, but then I want to go to silver. 2 coins in the middle. That's a discussion. Says the Gemara over here in Yerushalayim. It seems like that's perfectly mutter. Says the Gemara, Shani Yerushalayim. You cannot even ask about Yerushalayim. Why not? Kesef b'chol asher taven nafshecha. And then the pasuk says babakar uvatzon. What that means is that you're allowed to buy anything you want. And what's Rava? Yerushalayim kamosvus. You're asking a question about Yerushalayim. Thank you very much. You can't ask about Yerushalayim. Shani Yerushalayim. It's different once you're in Yerushalayim. When you're outside of Yerushalayim, that's when we have this din that you can only have one type of coinage interrupting the peiros. That's what you're able to do. However, if you have a scenario where you're in Yerushalayim, there we have no restrictions of coinage because we need you to get down to a denomination of coins that is what people use on the street. If I have a $500 bill, it's unusable. That's not practical. So when I get to Yerushalayim, you can take your silver, you could break it down into prutos, no problem. You can have 2 coins. We're 10 lines from the bottom of Mem Hamad Al. So the Gemara says, but in Yerushalayim, it's not that way because the pasuk says, you can buy anything you want. If you're going to buy anything you want, then obviously you can do from gold to silver to prutos, whatever you need to do. Tashma, says the Gemara. Now let's talk about outside of Yerushalayim. Haporet sela mi maos meiser. Beishamai omrim b'chol sela maos. Beishil omrim b'shekel kesef b'shekel maos. So we see over here from Beishamai that you're allowed to fully cash out your sela onto coins, and Beishil, of course, will still say half. So we see outside of Yerushalayim that there is a limit. So here we see a kula that we are allowed to use kesef sheni, and that is, again, we have to make sure we're not going to be losing money for the meiser sheni. That would be halachically problematic, but assuming that we're not, we're able to do that. Ella itmar de Rav Yochanan v'Reb Shimon ben Lakish hachi itmar. Remember, yesterday we saw a brisa at the bottom of Mem Daled Amud Beis, and then we saw machlokes between Reish Lakish and Rav Yochanan as to how to understand Beis Shammai, Beis Hillel. Says the Gemara, we therefore need to re-understand the Shita of Rav Yochanan. And the Gemara says as follows. 2 lines from the bottom of Mem Hamad Al. Chad Amar Machlokes Bislain Al Dinar, and we spoke about this case yesterday. One possible Machlokes of Beis Shammai, Beis Hillel is when we're transferring silver coins onto gold coins. That's Slain Al Dinar. To Beis Shammai Sabre, Beis Shammai was of the opinion that we have a Gzeira. Gazrinon, turning to the top of Mem Hamad Beis, Shema Yisha Al Yosef, that perhaps if a person is going to wait to find just the right type of coins that he's willing to carry for the Shlep to Yerushalayim, let's say he's not happy with singles. He doesn't even want $5 bills. He wants hundreds. So we're afraid that, or Beis Shammai is afraid that Shema Yisha Al Yosef, he might take too long to go do the mitzvah of aliyah l'regel, and that's halachically problematic. The zimnin delo malu zuze bedinara. He might not be able to find the dollars that he's willing to carry. For a schlep like that, I'd rather carry a credit card. Pashut. I don't want to have to carry all of these coins. 786 prutos per sela. No, thank you. I'd rather have a sela. So that's what he was concerned about. But lo masik, and then you won't go up in an appropriate amount of time. He might be able, he doesn't care. At the end of the day, he's more committed to the cause than he is to the fact that he has to schlep a little bit more weight. So says, my wiring is to be in Beis Shammai's camp. Not halachically, just my OCD. I would want to be as lean as possible for a trip. I pack lean. I don't want to have 8 outfits. Bring exactly what you need. I don't want to bring 786 coins, and I want to bring half of 700. I want to bring 1 seller. Go find me a seller. I don't want to go until we get. So Beis Shammai was concerned, and Beis Hillel was not concerned, and that's how we understand the brisa from Mem Daled Amud Beis from yesterday. The brisa on Mem Daled Amud Beis said, "Lo ya'aseh adam slain dinarei zahav." The brisa on Mem Daled Amud Beis said in the name of Beis Shammai, you're not allowed to convert silver into gold. Now we know the answer why. Because he was concerned that you might not find what you're looking for, and if you don't find the coinage you're looking for, you'll delay going up to Eretz Yisrael, and that's a problem. And Beis Hillel was matir in that Mishnah, in that brisa on Mem Daled Amud Beis. Why was he matir? Because he wasn't concerned that someone wasn't going to go up to Yerushalayim. So that's version number 1 of the machlokas. And the Gemara adds on this the next layer that's important for us. Aval bepeiros, but when it comes to peiros themselves, al dinar, and straight onto gold coins, divrei hakol mechalalinan. Everyone agrees that's allowed. No problem at all. Direct to gold. Why? The kevan demir kaveh, because vegetables can get moldy. Ayin in your drawer, in your refrigerator, the ones on the bottom, the gross ones, the cucumbers that now look like carrots, something happened. There's a little bit of a science experiment happening. So then, the kevan de mirkave lo mashilahu. No one's going to delay anything when it comes to that. You're quickly going to want to take your produce and sell it, be mechalel, onto Ma'os in order to go up to Eretz Yisrael. So all of that, again, back to the machlokas of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel and Mem Daled Amud Aleph, where Beis Shammai says you're not allowed to change silver to gold, and Beis Hillel says yes, you are. What is the concern? The concern is delay of gain, yes or no. Beis Shammai is concerned, Beis Hillel is not. So again, we don't know if this is Reish Lakish or Rabbi Yochanan, but on Mem Hey Amud Beis we see the second of the possible explanations of the brisa from the bottom of Mem Daled Amud Beis. V'chad Amar, afilu beperos al dinar nami machloket. That really, it's possible that the machlokas on Mem Daled Amud Beis between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, where Beis Shammai limits and Beis Hillel is matir, that's even in a case where we're taking peros and we're being mechalal them onto gold coins. So now and Beis Shammai, of course, be the machmer. Says the Gemara as follows: I understand approach number one, the approach to say that Beis Shammai has a gzeira, that you cannot transfer slain onto dinarin, silver onto gold, because we're afraid it might delay you. But midoraisa it works, but midorabanan v'rabanan hu de gazruba, hainu de katani yaaseh velo yaaseh. That's why the Bryce and Mem Daled uses the language of yaaseh velo yaaseh. And if in fact you look at the Brisa on Mem Daled Amud Beis, it says Beis Shammai omrim lo yaaseh adam slain. It's a language of asiya. Can it be done? Can it not be done? A language of midirabanan. Do we allow it or do we not? According to the second possible machlokas, lahach lishna de amres midoraisa pligi, that they're arguing if it even works midoraisa, then the Mishnah, the Brisa and Mem Daled Amud Beis with Beis Shammai Beis Hillel should not have said yaaseh or lo yaaseh. It should have said mechal alinon velo mechal alinon mibayle. And the Gemara says, Taka, this is a good point, kasha. So we don't really have clarity in regards to Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel in regards to being mechalel from silver onto gold for Meiser Sheni. Now we're going to get into a subtlety within a subtlety. And this is a machlokas that goes like this, a discussion, I should say, that goes like this. If I have a coin, we already said that kinyanim don't work with currency. The way kinyanim come about is by making an acquisition directly on merchandise. So is it possible that I could do a kinyan chalipin in order to make a kinyan, not in order for the money to transfer, but can I use a kinyan chalipin to get your money? And normally when I make a kinyan, it's on merchandise, right? Can I use a kinyan chalipin not on merchandise, but for your money? It's not a regular kinyan of I'm trying to sell X and I'm trying to buy X and you sell X and I go over to you and I make a kinyan on the merchandise. We're doing something different. Can I do chalipin on coins in order to get the coins? Not to buy a third thing. Okay, right? Just trying to get your coins. Can I do a kinyan chalipin over here and your coins become mine? Says the Gemara, Itma.
Currency coins, not.
Yeah, they're currency coins. Yeah, as we will soon see in the Gemara. Right.
What?
Says the Gemara, Itmar, Rav Vilevi. Chad Amar Matbeya Naaseh Chalipin. One says that you are allowed to be kone coins with a chalipin. And one says that no, you're not allowed, I should say, it doesn't work. The act of chalipin doesn't work to acquire coins. So again, chalipin, I do something over here to acquire your coins over there. Not merchandise, not pira, but tiva. We're talking about coins. Am I able to acquire currency with an act of chalipin? The Gemara says, a quarter of the way down, Amarav Papa, my taima demand Omar ein matbea naseh chalipin. Why is it that one of these Amoraim, again, we don't know if it's Rav or a Levi, but both were very, very early Amoraim, the earliest. And what does Rav Papa say? Mishum dedaite atzurta. Because when one has currency, the value of the currency is that there is a tzura imprinted on the coin. There is a stage, I presume, I don't know how it works, but let's assume for the moment that first they make the coin with no imagery, and only later do they emboss or die cut, however they do it, and then put in the picture of the president on the quarters. I have no idea how quarters are made. Let's assume that that's the case. They first make the disc, and then they imprint. So says the Gemara, Mishum de daite atzurta, the tzurta avida de batla. And when you have something that's avida de batla, you have a coin, in due time the coins will wear down. Our currency is pretty good. We can see some wear and tear on coins over the years. But back in the day, the quality of their metals were way, way, way softer, way softer. We can make alloys that are very difficult to erode, but theirs were very bad. So there you can't do chalipin in that case. That's why they say that ein tiva nase chalipin. Why? Because the coin could easily fall apart, and therefore you're not allowed to. Now let's start analyzing. A third of the way down, mem hamid beis tnan. Hazav kones hakesef. This should look familiar. This is our Mishnah. Our Mishnah had said that if I make a kinyan on the zahav, if I do an acquisition on the gold, the pira, the merchandise, that brings about the need to pay. My lab bechalipin. Isn't this talking about a case of chalipin where I pick up the zahav and in turn, what happens? I force the money, right? So says the Gemara, my lab bechalipin ushma mino matbea nase chalipin. Perhaps we have a raya from our Mishnah that matbea is nase chalipin. Says the Gemara, lo, we're not talking about chalipin. We're talking about a monetary transaction, bedamim. I pick up the zahav, which is pira, it's merchandise, and then I have to pay you money. It's not. We're not talking about chalipin. We're talking about a regular payment. Says the Gemara, Yahachi, if that's true, then why is it that our Mishnah says hazav kones hakesef? It should be mechayev mi ba'ileh. The language of kone in our Mishnah is very difficult. Let's look at this line. Hazav kones hakesef. What did we say that meant? We say that when I make a kinyan on the gold bar, when I do mashicha, when I do whatever I do to make a kinyan on the merchandise, if I do that, that brings about an obligation for me to then pay, and I can't even be choser. So says the Gemara, why does it say Azov Kone es hakesef? If what you're saying is that we're talking about damim, that our Mishnah is not talking about chalipin, but it's talking about damim, so then mechayev mi baile. It should have had a different language in our Mishnah. Kone seems to imply chalipin, and mechayev, fine, that works much better with damim. Says the Gemara, you're right. Tni hazahav mechayev. You're right. Maybe what we should taka say is that our Mishnah's language is mechayev. The Balei HaTosfos over here discussed that it's not actually a text change in our Mishnah, which is important, and this doesn't always happen. But the Balei HaTosfos here say we're not supposed to change our Mishnah to hazav mechayev es hakesef. We leave it hazav kone, but that is how we're supposed to understand it. And that means that our Mishnah is no longer a raya for this discussion at all about chalipin. It's not discussing chalipin at all. It's a regular financial transaction. The gold is the pira, the silver is the tiva, and I'm just making a transaction. That's all that's happening. It says the Gemara, Hachanami mistabra. It's very logical to assume that our Mishnah, the case of hazahav kones hakesef, is talking about damim, money, and not chalipin. Why? Midikatani seifa. What does it say at the end? We're about halfway down on Mem Hayam and Beis. Hakesef eino kones hazahav. We said hakesef does not cause a kinyan for zahav. Namely, if the kesef is the merchandise, the pira, and I make a kinyan on the kesef, that does not mean that I have to then pay in the gold. Now says the Gemara, when we say that our Mishnah at the open of the Perek is discussing damim, that makes sense to me, that when gold is the pira and kaspa is the tiva, so vitiva pira lokani, that because the tiva is silver, coins are not what make kinyanim. Then I understand. If we're talking about damim, then I understand our Mishnah. That's why kesef can't be kona the gold. Ela amris bechalipin. If in fact you wanted to say that our Mishnah was talking about chalipin, tarvayu liknu ahadade. What does chalipin care what the merchandise is and what the tiva is? What's the difference? Is that chalipin? Just pick it up, do your thing, and move on. It says the Gemara of Haraya that our Mishnah must not be talking about chalipin, but rather must be talking about damim. So just to punctuate this, our Mishnah is not talking about chalipin. Our Mishnah of hazav kones hakesef and hakesef eino kones hazav and hamechoshes, that's all talking about regular transactions, nothing to do with chalipin at all. And the Gemara tries to bring a second raya to this effect, that we are not talking about we're not talking about chalipin, we're only talking about damim. A little bit more than halfway down. First words on the line, Va'od Tanya. We have another brisa. We said in our Mishnah, this is actually a brisa though, it's the same quote in the beginning, but we'll see soon that it deviates from our Mishnah. We said, Hakesef eino kona es hazav, that if I make a kinyan on the kesef, if I make a kinyan on the silver, so then that does not bring about the payment in gold. Ketzad, the Brisa writes, what is that case? So the case is like this. As we said, there are 25 silver pieces to 1 dinar out of gold. Says the Gemara, Machar lo esr mechamisha dinarim shel kesef b'dinar shel zahav. If I'm trying to sell 25 pieces of silver against 1 piece of gold, so then afal pisha moshaches hakesef, even if you do meshicha on the kesef, lo kanad shem shochet hazav. Remember that kesef is the tiva. Kesef is the currency. We don't make kinyanim with currency. We make kinyanim with merchandise, with pira. So says the Gemara, like we've been saying all along, that when we say a kesef eino kones hazab, even if I'm giving you my 25 silver coins for your 1 gold dinar, lemaisa, the kinyan doesn't take place until there's meshicha on the pira, on the zav, on the merchandise. And says the Gemara 2/3 of the way down, if you want to say that our Mishnah is talking about a regular case of damim, just a regular financial transaction, mishum hachi lo kani. That's why we would say that just picking up the kesef alone doesn't bring about the kinyan. Elayamris bechalipin, we might have thought nikni. So says the Gemara, that this brisa, along with our Mishnah, is not talking about chalipin. Says the Gemara, not so fast. There's another way to understand this brisa. Elamai, what you want to say? This brisa is talking about bedamim. You want to say the brisa is talking about damim? Then I don't understand. Or I should say, our Mishnah. Ihachi ema resha zav kones hakesef. We should look at the resha of that brisa. What does the brisa say? It says azav kones hakesef, that if I do an act of meshicha hagba, I do an act of kinyan on the zahav, so then it brings about the need for payment. And the brisa analyzes. Ketzad, what is the case with the gold? And the Gemara says, Machar lo dinar shel zahav be'esrim l'chamisha dinarin shel kesef. It's the other way around. I have a gold coin, and I'd like to get 25 silver coins. What does the brisa articulate? As we've been saying the whole time, Kevan shemoshaches hazahav nikne kesef b'chol makom shehu. It says the Gemara, once I have my 1 coin, the merchandise, and I make a kinyan on it to give to you, or when you make a kinyan on it to take it from me, that's it. We've effectuated the whole thing. It's done. You now own the kesef, and the money has to change hands. But there's a funny language here of nikna kesef b'chol makom. Iyamers bishlama b'chalipin. If you want to say that we're talking about chalipin, then I understand how I could do an act over here and acquire something over there. If you say that we're only talking about a regular financial transaction when we talk about the case of Hazav Kones HaKesef, why would the Brisa speak about this funky idea of Nikne Kesef B'chol Makom? That has nothing to do with our case. Our case is not talking about me doing an action over here and making a change, a purchase over there. It should have just said, Nischayev Gavra, now I'm obligated to pay the kesef. Why doesn't this brisa say that? Elamai, perhaps it must be chalipin. Maybe this brisa is talking about chalipin in the end. The Gemara says, Amar Rabashi, first of the very long lines on Memhei Amud Beis, La'olam b'damim. Really what we're talking about is a regular financial transaction when we're in the case of Azav Kones HaKesef. Umay b'chol makom shehu. What was the weird language of Bechol Makom Shu that you can make this acquisition work anywhere, which Taka does sound like a Kenyan Chalipin, where I can do an act over here and make a purchase over there. So what do the words Bechol Makom Shehu mean? It doesn't mean in any physical place. It means Kemos Shehu, like it was discussed, Kida Amarle, whatever the details were. I Amarle, for example, Me Arniki Chadasha Yahavin Allah. I want you to give me new currency and not old currency. So lo mati yashana. If you and I make a deal that I want coins minted after 2023, that's our deal. If you agree to it, that's our deal. That's what b'chol makom shu means. Afal gav da'adifi minayu. Even though the old ones may have more value, we have this now where the vintage coins can be worth more. There are some pennies. I remember as a little kid, you found some pennies that were, minted in like close to the years of the Depression, where there was like not a lot of coins being minted in those years. They have a lot more value. The penny was worth way more than a penny. But that's not what we negotiated. If we negotiated from a mi'arniki chadasha, that's what you have to give me. my time, because the Amar Le liyashnan kam, I want to be the one to age them. But that's what it means, bechol makom shu, and therefore, as we said, our Mishnah and the Brisa to follow, both of them are discussing a case of damim and not a case of chalipin. All of this is in support of the idea that ein matbea naaseh chalipin, that we are not able to do chalipin on coins. 5 lines from the bottom of the page on Mem Hamid Beis, the Gemara says, Amar Rav Papa, Afilu leman de Amar ein matbea naaseh chalipin, even according to the Shita, that we're not allowed to do chalipin with coins. Me'avad hu delo avid chalipin. You're right that you can't do chalipin on a coin to acquire another object. I can't do chalipin on coins to acquire your car. However, aknuye miknu bechalipin, but I am able to acquire the coins themselves. Just like any other case of merchandise, according to Rav Nachman. What was the case of Rav Nachman? Here it is. Pira le Rav Nachman. When we talk about merchandise according to Rav Nachman, lava falgav, isn't it true? De inhu lo avde chalipin aknuye maknu b'chalipin. That with certain cases of pira, of merchandise, we'll get into this on the next amud. Rav Nachman was of the opinion that not everything works for chalipin for a third party. So I might pick up my item over here and purchase another thing, but with money it doesn't always work, but the item itself can be acquired. Tiva nami loshna. The same thing should be with coins. So let's review up until right now in 3 sentences. What we're basically saying is that if this is, I don't have any money on me, but let's say that this was money, and I do a kinyan chalipin about this money. So here's the cash, and I do a kinyan chalipin about this money. So here's what's allowed. The kinyan chalipin that I do over here allows me to acquire this money. What I'm not allowed to do is a kinyan chalipin over here with money to buy another object. That does not work. So I can do a non-money item to buy money, but I cannot do money items to buy a non-money item. Okay, that brings us to the Brisa, a Mesve at the bottom, 2 lines from the bottom of Mem Hamid Beis. Let's continue. Mesve. Let's say that I was standing by the goren, I'm standing by the threshing floor, and I don't have any cash. Says the Gemara that Omer lechaver hare perus halal l'nusulan lach b'matana. I really need to do my perus shel meiser sheni, but I don't have any money on me. And the problem is that when I do this, I have to add a 5th. So says the Gemara, here's a little circuitous Ramoy thing I can do, is I can say, look, Hare Peris halalu nesulan lach b'matana. I give them to you, and then, as Rashi points out, in this case, this is a case where I fully trust you, and you're going to give it back to me later. The Choser Omer, and then I say, top of Mem Vav Amud Aleph, then I say, Hare hein mechulalin al maos sheyesh li babayis. The person says, I'm going to be mechulal, the meiser sheni, onto coins that are in my house. Taima, the reason why this works is the ein biyado maos, is because I was on the threshing floor. I don't have any money on me. But ha'im yesh biyado maos likni lehu leidach b'mashicha uparik. It would have been better, says the Gemara, if I had coins, then there could have been a kinyan mashicha, and then uparik, and then my stuff would have been transferred over onto the coins. The hachi adif, the havale nachri, would have been better, but then to use the stranger. Nachri doesn't mean a goy in this case, it means the second party. But if you want to say, like the Havamina, like one of the 2 sheets we saw on Mem Hamid Beis toward the top, if you want to say that matbea is nikna bechalipin, niknu leimos leheach agav sudar v'lifrok, then we should have been able to do a kinyan sudar on money, a kinyan chalipin on money, but we didn't say that in the Brisa. Elamai, it must be that we're not allowed to do a kinyan chalipin with money. Says the Gemara, no, the lesle sudar. He had nothing to use to do the kinyan chalipin. Says the Gemara, v'nikninhu nehale agav karka. Okay, just use karka. It's his property. Says the Gemara, delesle karka. He doesn't have any property. What do you mean he doesn't have property? Says the Gemara. The guy's standing on his own threshing floor. Says the Gemara, the guy had absolutely nothing to do a kinyan sudar with. We are not like that. We have pockets in our pants. We carry things all the time that we can use. Objects that are totally perfect as a kinyan sudar. We carry a pen. That's what you see all the time with Rabbanim. They're sitting there, they're being Mesader Kedushin. They tell the husband, we're going to have the ksuba. You have to raise the pen. It indicates you're being mechayiv yourself by the t'naim. So many times we rely on kinyan sudar, kinyan chalipin. Of course we have stuff. Says the Gemara, this guy had nothing. Says the Gemara, no way. No way. Mem vav midbei amanala 10 lines down. That there's this man who's effectively naked, is what the word artiloi means, is undressed. The less lay below klum. The guy has nothing. That's what the Mishnah came to teach me. This quack case where the guy has nothing to do with the kid. No way. It must be. That's too far fetched. There are ukimtas, and then there are ukimtas. This is ridiculous. It can't be that the brisa means that this guy had nothing to use as a kinyan sudar. Nothing. He's not even in his own house. He's traveling. You got nothing? It's not possible. So the Mishnah says that ukimta is too far, which is impressive because there are some fascinatingly wild ukimtas in Shas. This one was too far. So says the Gemara.
Guy would have to be like.
That's why the Gemara said you have to have nothing. You have to basically be naked. You have to have no clothing. Nothing. In fact, even Rav Papa, who on the bottom of the previous page was kind of on the side of Matbeya, is Nikne Bechalip. And here he starts to change his tune. How do we know? So we're about a quarter of the way down on Mem Vav Amud Aleph. Ki had Rav Papa habule tresar alfe dinare bechozai. Wow, this guy was a wealthy man. He had 12,000 gold coins in Bechozai. Akninhu Rav Shmuel bar Acha, and he did in fact give them over to Rav Shmuel bar Acha. But how did he do it? He didn't do it with chalipin. He did it agav aseifa de beise. He did it at the threshold of his house. Rashi, 2/3 of the way down, not quite actually, halfway down in the Rashis. Dibur hamaschil agav aseifa de beise miftan beiso, the threshold of his house. Alma mid isrich le knuyinhu agav karka shmamina ein mapeh nekne bechalipin. So we see over here that Rav Papa was of the opinion that you're not allowed to do chalipin on coins. And ki asa, this is the rest of the story, though no longer halachically relevant for us. When Rav Shmuel bar Acha showed up, nafak le'ape ad Tavach. Tavach was the name of a city. Now we wouldn't have thought that because Tavach means the middle, it means the center or whatever. Here it's actually the name of the city. Says the Gemara, V'chein amar ula ein matbea na'aseh chalipin, V'chein amar Rav Asi, ein matbea na'aseh chalipin, V'chein amar Rabbi Babrachana, amar Rabbi Yochanan, ein matbea na'aseh chalipin. And so says the Rambam and the Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch in Choshen Mishpat Reish Gimel Seif Aleph says you are not allowed to do chalipin with coins. Says the Gemara halfway down on Mem Vav Amud Aleph, Esvei Rabbi Abba Leula. Hold on one second. Haresh Hayu Chamarav Ufoalav Tovin Oso B'Shuk. You have workers who ask you for their paychecks in the shuk. The Gemara says, the Amar l'shulchani, I say, Taka, you're right. I have an issur of lo salin. I have to pay you now, but I don't have any money on me. But I owe you. Says the Gemara. I go over to the shulchani, to the guy who is he's basically a little the guy in the corner, right? The guy who has all the money. Tain li bedinar maos va'afarnaseim. Give me money, please, and I will pay my employees. V'ani elelach yafeh dinar v'trisis maos. I have the money. I have it. And I'm going to give you what you gave me plus a little bit. What does that sound like?
Ribbis.
Sounds a lot like ribbis, except for one thing. When does ribbis apply? Only with a halva, only with a loan. Now, im yesh lamos, if in fact he has these coins in his home, the one that he said to the shulchani that he would like to pay him back later with, mutter, no problem at all. This is allowed. We have to see why it's allowed, but it's allowed. V'im lav, if he doesn't have the money at home, then it's ribis and aser. V'i salka daitach ein matbeh naseh chalipin. If you want to say that you cannot do chalipin with coins, havile halva v'aser. So here's what's happening. I have to pay my employees. Shkia is coming. I owe my employees $1,000. You own one of those stores. You have a lot of cash. I say, listen, David, you have a lot of cash. Please don't lend me. Give me $1,000. I'm going to do a kinyan chalipin on the coin so that you now own. I'm not borrowing anything. We're transacting. I'm buying your merchandise, which is coins, for my merchandise at home. No halva. If you say ein chalipin by matbea, then this transaction doesn't work, and then it's a halva, and then it's ribis. Elamai, that must be that you're able to do a kinyan. You're able to do chalipin with a matbea. Says the Gemara, wow. Says the Gemara, ishtik. That's a stark argument. That shows you very clearly, or not very clearly, it shows you that this brisa can be learned, the story, I should say, can be learned as that we do have chalipin with a matbea. Says the Gemara, 3/4 of the way down, 12 lines from the bottom. Amarle, dilma idi be'idi beprutatos shanu, deleka alaihu tiva. Perhaps what we are talking about is something unique, which is coins that have yet to be imprinted upon them. They're the disc shape, the short, flat cylinders, whatever they're just, they look like a coin with nothing on them. It's hard for us to imagine. Could you imagine quarters that have no imprint? It's hard to fathom. We've never seen such a thing.
Slug.
What's that? What are slugs?
It's just a metal disc.
I've never seen one.
Word for us.
Yeah. The Gemara's term for asimon, yeah.
People used to use them in the payphones, make metal discs and
Yeah.
with nothing on them.
Yeah, I know.
Even in the parking meters, very hard to find. Cheap the system, they're called slugs.
I've never seen one.
Most people have never seen.
Dr. Karesh, do you have a past that we all need to know about, especially your child?
Those appreciate yeah, rolls of sure. Yeah.
You found them like accidentally?
Yeah.
Where did you guys grow up? I've never seen
Used
it.
in a payphone. Let's play with a payphone.
No, I know what a payphone is.
A slug was the thing for fishing, where you catch like a snail or something, a slug.
A slug is like a bug.
I think it's a snail
Either
or
metal, it's the exact size of a coin, but it has no.
A
Fascinating.
slug is like a fish or a snail or
It's like the same,
yeah.
but this is slightly different.
Slightly,
But also when I punch him in the face, I slug them.
yeah.
No, but.
The verb.
Because that's the type of person you are, if you're using a slug, that's why they call you that.
Oh, it's already Omer Dorsheni. You got like a hold of our Torah here.
Not to be confused with shit.
Okay, very true. Very different. Very different. So says the Gemara, no, maybe this case where you were telling me that I was going to tell you that I have to pay my guys, I'm going to make a kinyan over here. No, maybe it wasn't actually what we thought it was. Maybe it was biprutatos shanu deleka lativa and ve'idi pira havu. Really, both of them were not considered currency. Really, both of them were just considered merchandise. In other words, it was their weight in silver. It wasn't currency. It was just an object. Perhaps that's true. Says the Gemara, Amar le'in. That's very possible that that's how things would have worked out. The dekanami dekatani yafe dinar vitrisi v'lo katani dinar yafe vitrisi. It's yafe dinar, not dinar yafe. Yafe dinar is that it's a nice little taich, a nice little plan. Where's shmamina? That perhaps this case is not a raya. Therefore, we're back to where we were. That ein matbea nas ein. What's the phrase? Ein matbea nikna bechalipin. So Rav Ashi says 6-7 lines from the bottom of Mem Vav Amud Aleph. Rav Ashi Amar La'olam B'damim Uveprutatos Kevan De'islay Nase Ka'omer Lo. Since he has that dead weight in coinage without it being coins, it's just silver or whatever the metal was. It's as if he said Halveni Ad She'yavo B'ni O Ad She'emtza Mafteach, and that's considered acceptable. No problem at all. Tashma, we have another brisa. Kol Anase Damim Be'acher Kevan Shezacha Zeh Nischayev Zeh B'Chalipin. What does that mean? Anything that's made by damim be'acher, we don't know what that means yet. Kevan shezocha zeh, once there's a person is zocha, nischayev zeh bechalipin, this person would become held obligated once there is chalipin. What does that sound like? It sounds like chalipin works on coins. Says the Gemara, kol anase damim be'acher ma'nihu matbeya. Shma mina matbeya nase chalipin. Seems to be against what we've been saying for the majority of the day today. Seems to be the manbeas naseh chalipin. So Amar Rav Yehuda hachi kaman. Really, here's how we need to understand this. No, we're not talking about coins. Really, it's called ha nishom damim be'acher. Kevan shezochaze nischayev zeh bechalipin. When we're talking about something that's assessed $1 value, but not coins, something that's given $1 value, right? This can of soda is worth 8 cents. Do you know why? Because it doesn't taste good. They didn't have my drink in the refrigerator. Bitter. So there's no coins. We give it.
Small can.
I did.
Mecca,
I did.
if you're in the problem, you should make sure there's Coca-Cola.
I did. No, don't feed into it. I've already had one can of Coke today. It's fine.
What's your other drink of choice that you were looking for?
I can't tell you.
Well, how am I supposed to make sure it's there then?
I can't give Daf Yomi with the other drink that I like. It's amaretto.
Can you
Love.
expect that in the fridge?
No. No, I drink water sometimes, but tonight I actually went with this cherry stuff. It says guilt free on it.
Guilt free, there's nothing to be guilty about.
It's not.
If it's guilt free, you don't want it.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so says the Gemara, what we're talking about isn't coins, and from here you cannot infer that that chalip matbeh is nikne bechalipin, because really this is a nishom, it's just an evaluation. And says the Gemara, hachanami mistabra, this makes sense. Midikatani seifa. What does it say in the end? Ketzad. The Brisa says later, hichlif shor bepara. O chamor b'shor, shmamina. Is that dollars? No, that's not dollars. Those things that have a dollar value, but they're pira, they're merchandise, and that's totally different. So therefore, no raya from here. Says the Gemara, for those who thought that the Gemara was talking about matbeya, meaning in the Havamina, that's what the Gemara's question was. We thought that the Brisa, 4 lines from the bottom of Bava Aleph, was talking about matbeya, that it was talking about coins. But that if it was talking about coins, then how did the Brisa explain the ketzad of hichlif shor b'para o para b'shor? That's not coins. How do they understand the Brisa? Says the Gemara, hachi kamar upiri nami avdi chalipe my ketzad. Says hachi kamar upiri nami avdi chalipe. What they meant to say is that yes, coins, but also piri, also merchandise. Ketzad, how so? Hichlif shor b'para or chamor b'shor. Fine, wriggled out of the answer. Lamaisa, this Brisa is not a problem for us. Says the Gemara, Hanicha, all of this is good l'Rav Sheshes to Amar Piri Avdei Chalipin. That's great. You want to say that explanation about this Brisa from the bottom of Mem Hayim and Mem Vavam and Beis, no problem, that Piri is Avdei Chalipin, if you hold like Rav Sheshes. Elo the Rav Nachman is of the opinion, the Amar Kli in Aval. Piri, lo Avdei Chalipin. My ketzad, according to you who say that you're not allowed to do chalipin with piri, with merchandise, you can only do it with a kli, a pen, a cup, something that's a kli, a hammer, whatever. But you can't use regular merchandise. So then the whole ketzad was about shor and chamor, and what was the ketzad according to that approach? According to Rav Nachman, says the Gemara, hachi kamar yesh damim shehein kechalipin. There are some types of monies that are like chalipin ketzad. Hichlif demei shor bepara o demei chamor b'shor. So he re-understands the brisa. My time of the Rav Nachman. Why is it that Rav Nachman says that we are limited in what we use, that you cannot use merchandise and you have to use a kli? Says the Gemara, Savarlak Rav Nachman, Damar Davar Tor Mos Konos. Number one, and this Gemara itself, this all requires time. This line also especially requires time. The Gemara says that Rav Yochanan says, Davar Torah Mida Oraisa Ma'os Konos, that first of all, money itself makes a kinyan. But why is it that we only do so through Mashicha? Meaning our whole principle so far is that we said currency is not a kinyan. Mida Oraisa currency works. We just don't do it. Why not? We only do Mashicha. Why? Because Gzeira Shema Yomar Lo Nisrfu Chitecha Be'aliyah. Let's say that I allowed money to make a transaction. So I go over to Michael, I say, here's $1,000. Tomorrow, bring me what I bought. But that night, there's a fire in his barn, and Rahman al-Islam, and it burns all of my product. The Chachamim said, too much politics, too hard. So what we're going to do is we're not going to do that. We're not going to allow money alone to work. There has to be Mashiach. You have to bring the item into your own property. And where there is nothing that's where it's a case that's not so common, then then a case that's not so common, there's not a gzera. So when we're talking about dmei shor b'paro, like we did 5 lines ago, then we allow for that to take place. Otherwise, we require Mashiach. Says the Gemara, and we'll end with these next 5 lines. We're halfway down on Mevav Mebeis. The Reish Lakish to Amar Mashiach meforeshes min Torah. According to Reish Lakish, who holds that Mashiach is meforesh in Chumash. All of this works out according to Rav Sheshes, that Mashiach works because payros work. How could it be that Reish Lakish could be within the camp of Rav Nachman. Says the Gemara, he can't be. You're 100% right. Al Korachach, it must be that in order to understand Reish Lakish, it's Kirav Shesha, it's Metaritza, he must understand only according to Rav Nachman, to Rav Sheshes. We'll stop right here, 2/3 of the way down on Bava Mid Beis. We did good. We didn't quite get to the end, but I'll take it. Wishing you all a beautiful night.